So, hello. I'll answer some questions suggested to me during this conference, dedicated to the questions of self-communication, the auto-communication in semiotics. The first question is, does auto-communication organize the self, ego, or information knowledge, or something else? I suppose that self-communication as such is such a miracle that demonstrates us very interesting phenomena. If we can communicate with somebody in ourself, that means this somebody is present in ourselves. So we can speak about at least two different partners of communication in us. Who are those partners of communication? Definitely, this aspect organizes our self-reflection, because we understand ourselves in communication with the others, but then we go inside ourselves and share this experience with whom? This is the major question, as it seems to me at the moment, of our semiotic discipline as such. Because when we admit that we can communicate with ourselves, then we communicate through some instance that makes us different inside ourself. And this instrument, or I would rather say this partner organism, is language. So we are always communicating with ourselves by means of language, as well as with the others. What it organizes then? Everything. Without language, we cannot communicate. Without language, we cannot understand ourselves. Then we are always understanding ourselves by means of this intermediary instance, language.
I'll rephrase the question. Auto communication qualitatively restructures something, but what is this something? Is it yourself, or is it the information?
This is the core question. What structures language? Can you answer at this question? What structures language? That was my question during the last session, by the way. What is structured? If we take off this instrument, language, in general sense, in semiotics we use language in a very broad sense, as you know. So then what is left? And it seems that is nothing left. Still, we always feel that language is not equal to us, to ourself, whatever it is.
Do I understand correctly then that you are treating every sign language, every
sign system as a language?
As a language.
Yes, this is the basic statement of semiotics. We treat all sign systems as a kind of language. Those systems, they determine different languages. Languages, multiple languages, but still any sign system is a language for me.
Okay. This is something different from the questions, but how do you feel about Charles Morris's claim that we should dispense with terms like language and sign and meaning because they are too vague?
Yes, if he would suggest something better, then we could discuss this question. But until now, actually, it does not even matter how we call those things. Their description is functional. Language is simply a mean of transmitting information in system way. So any system can be used as a language. What is a system? System is a set of elements and rules of using them. And this system forms a filter. We filter the whole outward, so to say, world into our mental image of phantom that we create of ourselves, first of all.
move on to the next one.
When is a text auto-communicational? Upon first reading, upon repeated readings, or in any reading? Of course, in any reading. If nobody reads a text, there is no text. No text. We, interpreters, introduce system into any object. Text including the matter that this text, given text, for example, those questions, were composed already in comprehensible language is another thing. It is not obligatory. We can read any object as a text, introducing the system approach. But, of course, unpredictability, that means sense, increases when we have two equal partners of communication, one generating text, the other interpreting. But only in reading text can come into being at all.
Okay. I'll rephrase the question in a more specific way. This question stems from Henry Brons, and he claims that he has his own theory of order communication that claims that not every text is order communicational, because if the text does not contain accurate information, for example, if you read Anna Karenina, you won't know basically anything about Russian railway, but you do enjoy Anna Karenina, and you get something inspirational from it that communicates with you, even though it doesn't give you any specific information.
It gives some information, that's all. And what do you want, or what kind of information you'll extract from this text depends on you, on your task, on your aim, pragmatics. What do you want to learn from Anna Karenina? About railways in Russia at the second half of 19th century? Usually not. That is about psychology. So it depends on the... But of course, author of a text is not something alien to this text. Author has right to compose this text in a desired way. Author has his or her task, pragmatics, and interpreter has the same set. And when they interrelate with each other. So this is a dialogue with the author.
Okay, let's move on.
How is auto-communication related to the notion of feedback? I suppose that everything about communication is about feedback. There is no communication if we do not get any feedback. So feedback is important checking moment of the very fact that this act of communication had happened. If you do not get... This is simple scheme, stimuli reaction. No reaction, no communication. So that's why feedback is directly built into a communicative process. And auto-communication is the same. I would say that auto-communication is some particular case of any kind of communication. It is simply a higher level of understanding of the process of communication, talking to yourself as if you have constructed some the other communicative partner. So feedback from yourself will look as, oh, I have learned from myself something new by means of language, of course.
You're already jumping to questions 5 and 6. Let's take 4.
So, do you want me... auto-communication and what do you mean?
4.
Number 4. How does a culture communicate with itself? I do not understand the question. Why do you think that culture communicates with itself?
Well,
this is an assumption. Maybe I do not join this assumption.
in a general sense, culture is mixed in with the notion of order communication, and one of the interpretations by Lotman is that culture is a singular message that humanity sends to itself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in this sense, then...
But what about in the sense that culture is a form of, culture itself is an artificial intelligence, it is a personality, so to say, and how does it communicate with itself?
I suppose that self-communication is still possible only by means of something else, that is instrument of language. So culture of course communicates with itself when we take some historical restricted period. Yes, we can say that authors who wrote their texts in 19th century communicate with the authors who started in 20th century. We communicate with them. Or I communicate with my teachers, Yuri Lotman and Zara Mintz, by means of their texts. So this means that culture communicates with itself, but the borders of this self is very, very vague. When we go to the question of bordering, so to say what is the self of culture, it is impossible simply. When you go to those frontiers of different languages, of different rites, rituals, it is a complex of multiple science systems, and they communicate with itself inside this or that, whatever, culture, human life.
An acceptable answer would have also been that every time someone creates a text, a new text, a veritable new text with new meaning, then culture is in fact communicating with itself through this new text.
But again, through language. Through language. Texts are products of language. Culture is a product of language practiced by its organs, humans in our case, or dogs in the case with dogs. So this is a phantom, collective phantom, we agreed to call our culture or our language.
How do you feel about the proposition that culture is also a language?
No, I think that yes, culture is a product of language, and that's why we can extract the rules and regularities of language practiced by this or that community, and this all forms culture. Memory, language skills, its organs of the language, members of this society, of this community, and so on. So this is a multidimensional whole. Yes, it's thinking a form of... with this I agree totally. Yes, thinking is a form of auto-communication. Thinking is arranging your impulses that you get from senses of organs of sense that you perceive, and then express them, represent them by different ways, in different ways, in words, maybe in pictures, maybe in body movements, and so on. But the very process of this translation, of course, takes place in individual brain, in personal individual brain. This is a process of thinking.
This question stems from Mikhail Bakhtin, actually, from his understanding of thinking as an internal dialogue, and it's also related to these closely related terms like intrapersonal communication, intrapsychic communication, and intrasubjective communication. And they are framed as forms of thinking.
Yes, I suppose that this is very clear classification, quite acceptable even at this moment.
Okay.
So, is autocommunication an interiorized form of social relations?
And the case is internal companions, people inside your head who you can talk to. like Juri Lotman claimed that he has internal conversations with other intellectual persons.
Yes, I suppose yes. It can be formulated in this way. Interest form of social relations. You think in a dialogue, yes, that happens, it is always with the society, social relations. It is all about your function within this or that community, within that.
I'll rephrase the question as, do you have any internal companions?
Oh yes, of course, a lot of them. Since my childhood, I used to play dolls, for example, and this is a specific self-constructed, actual partner of communication, invisible friend. I'm always followed by the whole bunch of invisible friends talking to me, including my teachers, Lotman and Zara. But they are here, in my brain.
Also, extending this question, one of the Eva claimed that every time you read a text, you let the consciousness of the author inside yourself, and you can communicate with that foreign consciousness. How do you feel about that?
Yes, I would say this is wishful thinking. We do not know whether we can reconstruct or approach to another's mind, author's mind. What we perceive is determined by our cultural, personal cultural background, and we can never achieve total understanding of the other. It doesn't mean whether it is Lev Tolstoy or your schoolmate, never ever. But we can make negotiations about it. With the dead author, it is very hard to do, but with the life partners, it happens sometimes, understanding. But in a way, I think that all acts of communication, all acts of self-communication are communication acts, and all communication acts are self-communication acts in a way.
The next one is a technical question.
Technical question.
You may skip that if you wish to.
How are automodal self-description? But it is self-evident that in the process of thinking, let us call autocommunication thinking simply.
Okay.
Maybe it will help further on. In this process, you create a picture, world view. Smaller, bigger, more general, more specified, less. This is a model, and this model will be, of course, self-model, first of all. Everything that we model, it is our mind. So what we describe by means of language is always our mind. So everything went badly in camera. Okay.
No, it's just now you're in the center.
So, was it the answer?
To be truthful, I do not know the answer to this one.
You do not know?
But most of these questions don't have a right or wrong answer.
But no, I did not ask right or wrong. I asked what it is an answer.
Well, I presume that self-description is one outcome of autocommunication.
And some other outcomes? Examples?
Well, actually that's number 8, qualitative restructuring of information. That is the most common.
An example on the spot of how qualitatively restructures information. It's a complicated question,
Well,
but
the common example which Lotman draws would be that you're writing a poem and then you hear, for example, the train rhythm, and it inspires you to create a certain rhythm in your own poem. So I think the question is about, can you invent or remember any your own examples of how self-communication changes something specific.
Well, maybe this is. Could answer, but this answer would be too general. It is not an example or precise example, but I suppose it is not satisfactory answer, general answer. So let us leave, simply skip this question. Can auto-communication occur through the transfer of messages in space instead of time?
I'll explain quickly. This is an absurd question.
Yes.
Lotman says very frankly that I-he communication is a transfer of messages through space, and I communication is a transfer of messages through
in time.
So can you think of any way whatsoever?
Yes, I know this distinction by Yuri Lotman, but I disagree with it because we can only speak about preferences. Time and space is analytical distinction. Time-space is one continuum, and we can only discuss the questions of preferences. So we discussed this Tolstoy's text, for example. It is communication in time. Tolstoy communicates with us, our readers, and it is not self-communication in a sense, but self-communication also happens as in space, so in time. This is the law.
I can rephrase the question in a more suitable way, because the factor of time, the importance of it here is to create this difference between me and myself. So can you think of any other ways to create this difference so that all the communication would be meaningful?
No. The only way is this gap in between you and you by means of language. And so that takes time. That takes both time and space. Always. So you are not equal. The next moment the world changes. The whole system, semiosphere, as Lotman describes it is not static. It is a permanent change, constant change, mutable, and of course, this is Heraclitus. You cannot enter one and the same flow twice. We change in time, and that's why we can communicate with ourselves in time, and so on.
The Lithuanian tenet here would be that the change in time is necessary for there to occur another code, because the message doesn't change. What changes is the code, and by code, generally yourself. So the rhythm is actually a syntactical code that changes the message.
Yes, it does. It changes the message.
But I think we can take the next one.
Yeah. Are self-perception and self-awareness forms of auto-communication? Yes.
Now this is a question that is near and dear to me, because this evades language. Because self-perception and self-awareness are not language phenomena, they are very immediate.
I don't think so. Self-perception,
For example,
is self-perception. You cannot perceive yourself without contact with the otherness. The otherness in the most general sense.
Let's take the example of kinesthesia. For example, I'm not looking at my hand, but I know what it's doing. Is this auto communication?
Why not?
Why not?
Okay. The major question here is that again we cannot define the main terms that we're using here. We use term auto or self. What does it mean? Again, we return to the same question that I pronounced during the last session. If we take off language in general sense of human being, what is left? What is self-perception if you do not decode information? And decoding information is all about the otherness, at least with the help of language. So a man can stay alone on an isolated island and communicate with himself or him or herself by means of language, because we are never alone. We bear this something that is not equal to us. We are not equal to language. We feel it. All of us feel it. We describe language, we follow it, see the laws, but we are not language. Language somehow is different to us. And that's why self-perception is about this. We have different senses, different channels. We collect, accumulate this information. Those senses are channels, filters, or what? Nobody knows. We get the result of self-perception, for example, because we are structured in this way, formed. A set of filters collecting information worked by our brain by means of language. First of all, verbal language, of course, for humans. So this is a very uncertain point about self. What is this self? Where are the borders of this self?
And what do you think?
I think it in such a way that we are all organic, at least, stuff in this world, on the earth. We are a manifestation of language principles. It embodies itself in us, in its organs. And that's why it develops in different ways, like a forest or the whole landscape with different languages, different branches of those languages, and so on and so on. So language realizes, but the very fact of self-communication detects the moment, the point. Okay, we can stop and then
move on to
continue.
next questions.
The very fact of self-communication proves that we got access to the next level of cooperation with language, with this other that inhabited the whole organic stuff on this earth. We got this access to understand, yes, here is language, but who are we? And proceed from this point to cooperate with language consciously.
What if we skip 2 questions and move on to the bonus questions?
To what? Bonus. Oh,
13.
okay. So how would you view personality as an individual set of social significant codes?
This is something that Otman has said, and many repeat it, but no one has taken it up and developed it. So what do you think about this claim, that personality is an individual selection of socially significant codes?
Yes, I suppose yes. But if we understand socially significant codes rather widely, so as any kind of communication with the environment, then in this sense I would agree. Because if we reduce this field of, it is again about definitions and restricting our terms. If we reduce social life only to, I don't know, being included into professional hierarchies, then it will not work. But if we'll expand it widely, then I totally agree. This is a set of socially significant codes or codes of communications, skills and possible system of filters. Again, set of filters, different filters. Is there any difference between auto-communication and self-communication?
This is a question about terms.
This is a question about terms. Until we have not defined what is self, so we cannot discuss this aspect as well.
Okay.
Also, maybe in the term of auto-communication, it is more vivid, or it is more clear the aspect of creativity. Self does not bear this meaning of being active in generating statements, in generating systems. But in auto, you take responsibility on your behalf, separating yourself from language. Although I know that I am determined by language, still I am, by my own will, I accept responsibility of acting and speaking. And this is my part of cooperation with all the set of significant codes, socially significant codes. My responsibility. This is authorship, and that can make a difference.
So let's tie this up with the last question and then go to the presentation.
How do I communicate? In various ways.
Well, name a few. You have a couple of minutes.
But all texts that I produce are, first of all, the product of self-communication. I cooperate with language, although in a paradoxical way, when you train, the more you train in language, the more you learn to operate language, the less you participate in the process of generating statements on this language. You do it absolutely automatically. I can produce my thought in language, in words, or using keyboard in real time. I have no gap between my thought and fixating this thought in language. So, because I am trained in this language, I achieved it through learning. And this is really a paradox, because it seems that if language is different to us, then the more you train, the more you should resist the otherness of language. But in my case, it goes another way.
Okay. Is that it?
Yes.
Thank you for your answers.
It will be awful.